Have you ever felt like you're running in circles, chasing something that always seems just out of reach? Maybe you've asked yourself, what's the point of all this? Or felt like the world is indifferent to your efforts? Well, you're not alone. These are the questions that have haunted humanity for centuries. And today, we're diving into one of the most powerful answers ever given, an answer that comes from one of the most profound thinkers of the 20th century, Albert Camus. In today's video, we're going to explore Camus' groundbreaking philosophy of absurdism, how we can confront the inherent meaninglessness of life and still live authentically. Now, I know what you're thinking, meaninglessness? That sounds pretty bleak, but trust me, this philosophy offers something much more powerful than despair. Instead of offering easy answers or comforting lies, Camus gives us the freedom to live fully, to find joy and meaning in our struggle, and to create our own purpose, even in a world that seems indifferent to our existence. Through Camus' lens, the search for meaning is not a futile exercise. It's a revolutionary act, one that requires us to rebel against the absurdity of the world with our own creativity, love, and choices. So, are you ready to face the absurd, embrace freedom, and discover what it really means to live authentically? Stick around, because we're about to dive deep into one of the most important and empowering philosophies that have ever existed. But before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button if you're excited for today's topic. Share this video with anyone you know who might be questioning their purpose or struggling to find meaning in life. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and click that notification bell so you never miss a video that challenges you to think deeply. And hey, if you love this content, don't hesitate to super thank me to show your support. It helps keep the channel going and ensures I can keep bringing you thought-provoking ideas every week. All right, let's dive into Camus' world of absurdism and see how we can use it to live more authentically in today's chaotic world. The absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. Albert Camus, imagine waking up one day to find yourself standing in the middle of a vast, empty desert. The sun beats relentlessly overhead, casting long shadows that stretch endlessly across the barren land. There are no signs of life, no roads to follow, and no answers to the questions that fill your mind. You search for meaning, you call out into the silence, but the world offers nothing in return. This scenario, although extreme, serves as a powerful metaphor for what the philosopher Albert Camus called the absurd, the tension between our search for meaning and the meaninglessness of the universe. Camus, a French-Algerian philosopher and writer, is often associated with existentialism, although he preferred to be seen as an absurdist. He is best known for his works The Stranger, The Myth of Sisyphus, and The Plague, which explore the fundamental struggle of human existence. At the heart of his philosophy is the concept of the absurd, which arises from the conflict between our deep-seated desire to find meaning in life and the indifferent, often hostile nature of the universe that offers no such answers. This conflict, according to Camus, is the absurdity of existence. Absurdism, in its simplest form, addresses a profound and unsettling truth. The universe does not provide any inherent purpose or meaning. It is not that the world is inherently evil or malicious, but rather that it is indifferent to human concerns. Our desire for answers, for understanding, and for significance stands in stark contrast to a world that remains silent, unconcerned with our personal struggles. The more we search for meaning, the more we are confronted by the cold, unyielding silence of the universe. This, for Camus, is the essence of the absurd. For most of us, this realization comes gradually. We are born into a world full of promise, where we are told that there is a purpose to life. We grow up with the belief that if we work hard enough, follow the right path, and live according to certain rules, we will find fulfillment. But what happens when we reach a point in life where those promises are unfulfilled? What happens when the answers we seek are not forthcoming? This is where the absurd reveals itself. As we become more aware of the world's indifference, we begin to see that the purpose we seek may not exist at all. The absurdity of existence is not just an abstract philosophical concept. It is a lived experience. Every day, we encounter moments where our desires for meaning clash with the reality of a purposeless universe. Take, for instance, the daily grind of work. Many people find themselves in jobs that feel monotonous and disconnected from any greater sense of purpose. They wake up every morning, go through the motions, and return home at night feeling as though they have accomplished little of real value. Despite our best efforts to find significance in our careers, relationships, or daily routines, we are often left with a sense of emptiness, as though we are simply going through the motions of life without any clear direction. This experience of absurdity is not confined to the mundane aspects of daily life. It can also manifest in more profound ways, such as during personal crises or times of suffering. Imagine losing a loved one or experiencing a traumatic event. In these moments, the inherent meaninglessness of existence can become painfully apparent. We ask ourselves why we must endure such hardship, why life seems so unfair, and why the universe appears to offer no consolation in our time of need. These are the moments when the absurdity of existence becomes undeniable. In the face of such absurdity, it is natural to feel overwhelmed, lost, or even angry. After all, we have spent our entire lives searching for answers, and now we are confronted with the uncomfortable truth that there may be no answers at all. Camus acknowledges this feeling of despair, but he also offers a radical way forward. Instead of retreating into despair or seeking solace in religious or philosophical systems that promise to explain the meaning of life, Camus urges us to confront the absurd head-on and to live with it. For Camus, the most profound realization is that life is not something to be endured while we wait for answers from an outside source. Instead, we must take responsibility for creating our own meaning in a world that offers none. The absurd does not give us permission to give up on life. Rather, it challenges us to live more fully, more authentically. It forces us to face the reality of existence without relying on false hopes or comforting illusions. The absurd hero, in Camus' eyes, is the person who embraces this truth without resignation. The absurd hero does not retreat from the world or seek refuge in the idea of a higher power or an afterlife. Instead, they acknowledge the absurdity of existence and choose to live despite it. This requires a tremendous amount of courage, as it means accepting the reality that life is, in a sense, futile. But in that acceptance, there's a kind of freedom. Imagine a person who has been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Faced with the inevitability of death, they might be tempted to give up, to succumb to despair. But the absurd hero takes a different path. They accept the absurdity of their situation, and, in doing so, they find a renewed sense of purpose. They might not be able to change their fate, but they can choose how to live in the time they have left. They can choose to live fully, to engage with life on their own terms, and to find joy in the small, fleeting moments that make up their existence. This is the essence of what Camus calls revolt, the refusal to surrender to the absurdity of life, to continue searching for meaning, and to live authentically despite the universe's silence. The absurd is not just a philosophical idea. It is a fundamental aspect of human existence. It is the challenge we all face, to find meaning in a world that seems indifferent to our struggles. Camus does not offer us a neat, comforting solution to this problem, but he does offer a path forward. By confronting the absurd directly, by acknowledging the lack of inherent meaning in the universe, we are free to create our own meaning. And in that freedom, we find the power to live more authentically, to embrace life in all its complexity and uncertainty. In the end, the absurdity of existence is not something to fear or avoid. It is a challenge to be met, a call to live with greater awareness, greater courage, and greater authenticity. Camus teaches us that the search for meaning is not in vain. even if the answers we seek are never fully realized. By accepting the absurd, we can live more fully, more meaningfully, and with a deeper appreciation for the fleeting moments that make life worth living. The absurd, then, is not an enemy to be defeated, but a reality to be embraced. And in that embrace, we find the true essence of life itself. The philosophy of absurdism, as articulated by Albert Camus, delves deeply into the tension between the human yearning for meaning and the universe's stark indifference to that quest. At its core, absurdism confronts the fundamental paradox of human existence. We, as individuals, are compelled to seek meaning and purpose in life, yet the universe provides no such answers. This dissonance between our drive for meaning and the void of meaning inherent in the universe is what Camus calls the absurd. The human desire for meaning is not just an intellectual pursuit, it is an intrinsic part of our nature. From an early age, we are taught to search for purpose, whether that be through personal accomplishments, relationships, or belief systems. This quest for meaning is embedded in the way we interact with the world. We seek patterns, reasons, and explanations for everything from personal events to the grand mysteries of life. In a sense, meaning gives our lives direction. It helps us navigate the world and provides a framework for making sense of our experiences. However, the universe, according to Camus, is not a place that inherently provides answers to our questions. Instead, it is an indifferent, chaotic space that offers no clear purpose or design. The stars don't shine with a specific purpose for humanity, nor does nature follow a grand plan that includes the fulfillment of human desires. The more we look to the universe for meaning, the more we are confronted with its silence. This absence of meaning, Camus argues, is the essence of the absurd. This realization that the universe is indifferent to our needs and desires is not a comforting one. It creates a sense of alienation, a profound disconnect between what we yearn for and what we encounter. It's as if we were trying to communicate with a world that doesn't speak our language, a world that doesn't respond to our cries for purpose or direction. The more we try to impose our own meaning on the world, the more we are faced with its unyielding silence. For many, this recognition of the absurd leads to despair. After all, if there is no inherent purpose in life, why should we bother to seek meaning at all? Why should we work, love, or create if all of it ultimately leads to nothing? This is where the challenge of absurdism becomes most apparent. If life lacks meaning, how do we continue to live? Camus suggests that the very act of searching for meaning in a meaningless world is what defines our humanity. Despite the universe's indifference, we continue to search. We continue to ask questions, to seek patterns, and to try to make sense of our lives. This search is not only a response to the absurd, but also a reflection of our deep-seated need to feel that our existence matters, that it has significance. One of the most striking aspects of absurdism is how it forces us to confront this contradiction head-on. The human need for meaning is undeniable, yet it exists in direct opposition to the world's refusal to provide it. It is this conflict that creates the absurd. But rather than simply resigning ourselves to despair, Camus proposes an alternative. We can embrace the absurd without surrendering to it. We do not have to accept the meaninglessness of life as an excuse for inaction or nihilism. Instead, we must continue to live fully and authentically, even if we acknowledge that there is no ultimate purpose. Consider, for example, the pursuit of a career. Many people dedicate years of their lives to climbing the corporate ladder, thinking that success and achievement will provide them with the sense of purpose they seek. However, at some point, many of these individuals experience what Camus would describe as a moment of absurd realization. They reach the top, but the view is no different. They find that the success they have worked so hard for does not bring the meaning or fulfillment they anticipated. In this moment, the absurd becomes apparent. The career they built, the titles they have earned, and the status they have achieved, all of it seems ultimately inconsequential in the face of the vast indifference of the universe. This is not to say that people should abandon their careers or their goals. Camus does not advocate for a life of passivity or withdrawal. Instead, he suggests that we must embrace the absurdity of our situation. We must recognize that the world will not provide us with the answers we seek, but that does not mean we should stop searching, creating, and living. It means that we must find meaning in the act of living itself, rather than in the pursuit of some external or ultimate goal. The tension between the human desire for meaning and the meaninglessness of the universe is not something that can be easily resolved. It is a contradiction that cannot be fully reconciled. Yet, it is precisely in this tension that life becomes meaningful. When we confront the absurd, we are forced to live more authentically. We are compelled to acknowledge that life is fleeting, that our time is limited, and that we must make the most of the moments we have. The absurd does not negate the value of life. It enhances it by forcing us to live with greater awareness, greater intensity, and greater purpose. One of the most powerful examples of the absurd can be found in the myth of Sisyphus, which Camus uses as a central metaphor in his philosophy. In Greek mythology, Sisyphus is condemned to roll a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll back down each time he nears the top. This endless, pointless struggle is a perfect symbol for the absurd. Sisyphus' fate is to repeat this futile task for all eternity, with no hope of success or resolution. However, Camus argues that there is meaning in the act of rebellion itself. Sisyphus, in his perpetual struggle, is not defeated by the absurd. Rather, he embraces it. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, Camus writes, because Sisyphus chooses to continue his struggle despite the lack of ultimate purpose. In doing so, he affirms his own existence and defies the meaninglessness of the world. The absurd is not something to be overcome or eliminated. It is not a problem to be solved, but a condition to be lived with. It is a fact of existence that we cannot ignore or escape. The absurd is not an invitation to despair, but a challenge to live more fully. It is an invitation to create our own meaning in a world that offers none, to find joy in the struggle itself, and to live with the knowledge that our search for purpose may never be fulfilled, but that our lives are nonetheless worth living. The absurdity of existence, then, is not something that should make us stop seeking meaning. Rather, it should deepen our appreciation for the moments of life that we do have. It should remind us that meaning is not something that is handed to us from an external source, but something that we must create for ourselves. In embracing the absurd, we free ourselves from the need for answers and allow ourselves to live more fully in the present. The search for meaning is not in vain, even if the answers remain elusive. By recognizing the absurd, we can live more authentically, more intentionally, and with a deeper appreciation for the mystery and complexity of life itself. In Albert Camus' philosophy, the concept of the rebel plays a critical role in confronting the absurdity of existence. At its core, the rebel is not someone who passively accepts the meaninglessness of life, but one who actively chooses to resist it. This rebellion is not against society or political systems alone, but against the very condition of human existence itself. In a world devoid of inherent meaning, the rebel rejects resignation and embraces freedom to act, to choose, and to assert one's individuality despite the absurd. To understand Camus' concept of the rebel, it is necessary to first explore his idea of absurd revolt. The absurd, as previously discussed, emerges from the contradiction between the human desire for meaning and the universe's lack of inherent purpose. In response to this recognition, Camus proposes that we do not succumb to nihilism or despair, but instead rebel against the absurd by embracing the very freedom that the absurdity of life gives us. This is where the rebel comes into play. The rebel does not retreat into nihilism or religious hope. Instead, they reject the idea of ultimate meaninglessness as a reason to stop living or acting. Rather than surrendering to despair, the rebel responds with action, asserting their existence in a universe that offers no promises of ultimate meaning or purpose. The rebel's act of revolt can take many forms, but its defining feature is the refusal to let the absurd dictate one's life. The absurd revolt is an act of defiance, a refusal to passively accept the meaninglessness that the world presents. In a sense, this revolt is an assertion of individual freedom. While the universe may not offer inherent meaning, the rebel realizes that they have the power to create meaning through their own choices and actions. This idea is not about seeking a higher purpose in the traditional sense, but about finding purpose in the act of living itself, in choosing to live authentically and fully in the face of absurdity. The rebellion is also an affirmation of life itself. To rebel against the absurd is to acknowledge that, although life may be inherently meaningless, it is still worth living. It is to affirm that life is valuable because we choose to value it, not because it has some inherent cosmic significance. The rebel rejects the idea that meaning can only be found in some higher plane, whether religious, metaphysical, or predetermined. Instead, the rebel finds meaning in their own experience of life, in the relationships they build, the art they create, the causes they champion, and the choices they make. This is not a denial of the absurd, but a recognition that we can live and act with integrity despite the lack of meaning. Take, for instance, the figure of the artist. The artist, according to Camus, is a quintessential example of the rebel. In the face of life's inherent meaninglessness, the artist continues to create, knowing that their work may never be truly appreciated or understood. Yet, the artist creates because the act of creation itself is an assertion of freedom. It is a way to affirm life in the midst of the absurd. The artist does not create because they believe their work will provide some ultimate answer to the mysteries of existence. Rather, they create because the act of creation is meaningful in itself. The artist rebels against the absurdity of the universe by choosing to give their life meaning through their craft. This act of rebellion, of choosing to create meaning in the face of meaninglessness, can also be seen in the lives of everyday people. Consider someone who works tirelessly to help others, perhaps through volunteer work or community service. They know that their efforts may not change the world in any profound, lasting way. They may never be recognized for their contributions, and their actions may not have any grand cosmic significance. Yet, they continue to act, choosing to help because it is meaningful to them. In this way, they are embodying Camus' concept of revolt not by overthrowing some external force, but by choosing to live authentically in the face of a world that offers no inherent answers. The absurd revolt, then, is not about rejecting life or giving up on the search for meaning. Instead, it is about choosing to live fully and authentically in spite of the absurdity of existence. The rebel acknowledges the meaninglessness of life, but chooses to live as though it matters. This is where Camus' philosophy departs from traditional existentialism. While existentialist thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre emphasize the individual's ability to create meaning in a meaningless world, Camus takes this a step further. For Camus, the rebel's action does not stem from a desire to construct a meaningful existence through thought or reason, but from a fundamental act of defiance against the absurd. It is an act of freedom. The concept of freedom is central to the idea of revolt. According to Camus, in a world that offers no objective meaning, the individual is left with a radical freedom, the freedom to act, to choose, to define their own life. This freedom, however, is not always easy to bear. It comes with the responsibility of accepting the absurd and living with the knowledge that our actions, while significant to us, are ultimately insignificant in the grand scheme of the universe. This recognition, however, does not lead to despair. Instead, it empowers the individual. In the absence of cosmic meaning, the individual is free to create their own meaning, to live according to their own values, and to act in ways that reflect their own understanding of what is important. This freedom is both liberating and terrifying. It means that there is no external authority or divine purpose to dictate how we should live. There is no ultimate justification for our actions, no final reason why we exist. And yet, this freedom allows us to live authentically, to choose our own paths, and to rebel against the meaningless world that surrounds us. The rebel is free precisely because they acknowledge that the universe offers no guarantees, no answers, and no inherent purpose. It is through this radical freedom that the rebel asserts their existence, choosing to live with authenticity and integrity in a world that offers none of these things naturally. It is important to note that the absurd revolt does not require any grand political or social movement. While Camus himself was involved in political activism, particularly in opposition to totalitarianism and colonialism, the rebellion he speaks of is fundamentally personal. It is a rebellion against the condition of human existence itself. The rebel does not need to fight against an external enemy to assert their freedom. The battle is internal. It is a battle against the tendency to succumb to despair, to surrender to nihilism, or to search for false meaning in things that are ultimately inconsequential. Instead, the rebel chooses to live authentically, choosing to act in ways that affirm their freedom and their existence. To live authentically in this way is to live with constant awareness of the absurd, yet not to be paralyzed by it. It is to acknowledge that the universe offers no guarantees, yet still choose to live as though it matters. The rebel's life is defined not by the quest for ultimate meaning, but by the choice to live meaningfully in the present moment, in the face of life's inevitable absurdity. In conclusion, the concept of the rebel in Camus philosophy is one of defiance, freedom, and authenticity. The rebel does not seek to deny the absurdity of existence, but to live with it. In the face of meaninglessness, the rebel embraces their freedom and chooses to act, creating meaning in the process. This rebellion is not a rejection of life, but an affirmation of it, a commitment to live fully and authentically despite the universe's indifference. The absurd revolt is, ultimately, a rejection of resignation and a call to embrace the freedom and responsibility that come with confronting the absurd. In today's world, the philosophy of absurdism, as articulated by Albert Camus, resonates more than ever. The sense of existential crisis, feelings of disillusionment, and the ongoing search for meaning in life are very much alive in contemporary society. Whether it's the overwhelming pace of technological advancement, the erosion of traditional values, or the increasing fragmentation of communities, people today often find themselves questioning the purpose of their lives, much like Camus described in his works. In this context, Camus absurdism offers not only a way to understand these feelings, but also a path forward for dealing with them. One of the most striking issues that people face today is the sense of directionlessness or a loss of purpose. This is particularly evident in a society that often promotes individual success and material wealth as the ultimate goals. The relentless pursuit of career achievements, financial stability, or social status often leaves individuals feeling empty, as if no matter how much they attain, it is never enough. It's a feeling that Camus describes vividly when he speaks about the absurd, the disconnect between our desire for meaning and the universe's indifference to those desires. This sense of futility is compounded by the pressures of modern society, which often equates self-worth with external markers of success. Social media amplifies this dynamic, with people constantly comparing themselves to others and striving to meet unrealistic standards of happiness, success, and fulfillment. The result is a growing sense of frustration, anxiety, and alienation. Camus saw this as a central aspect of the absurd, our internal need for meaning in a world that offers no such meaning. In many ways, today's society is a manifestation of this absurdity, where people are encouraged to keep chasing after things that will not ultimately fulfill them, because the world itself offers no inherent purpose. The feelings of disillusionment and alienation are also deeply connected to what Camus describes as the crisis of modernity. We are increasingly living in a world that offers no definitive answers to life's biggest questions. The decline of traditional belief systems, the erosion of communal ties, and the fragmentation of the individual all contribute to a sense of meaninglessness. Without shared values or a common understanding of life's purpose, people often find themselves drifting aimlessly, unsure of where to turn for guidance. This mirrors the experience of Camus' protagonist in the myth of Sisyphus, the sense of pushing a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll back down again, over and over, with no resolution in sight. But how do we cope with this sense of meaninglessness? How do we find a way to live authentically in a world that offers no inherent meaning? This is where Camus' philosophy of absurd revolt comes into play. In the face of the absurd, Camus suggests that we do not surrender to nihilism or despair. Instead, we choose to live, to act, and to rebel against the absurdity of life. It is this choice to live authentically, to create meaning in a world devoid of meaning, that forms the core of Camus' philosophy and offers a way forward for people today. Camus' concept of the rebel is particularly relevant in the modern world. The rebel does not passively accept the meaninglessness of existence, but actively engages with life despite its inherent absurdity. In today's world, being a rebel in Camus' sense means rejecting the idea that our lives are defined by external factors, whether they be societal expectations, material success, or the approval of others, and instead focusing on creating our own meaning through our actions and choices. In other words, the modern rebel is someone who refuses to be defined by the expectations of a world that offers no clear answers, and instead chooses to define themselves through their own experiences and values. One way in which people today can apply Camus' principles to their own lives is by embracing the idea of personal freedom and responsibility. In a world that often feels chaotic and fragmented, it's easy to fall into the trap of passivity, of waiting for answers to come from outside ourselves. But Camus challenges us to take responsibility for our own lives, to recognize that, even in the face of the absurd, we have the freedom to choose how we live. This does not mean that we will find a grand, cosmic purpose for our existence, but it means that we have the freedom to create meaning in the here and now. Take, for example, the modern workplace. Many people today feel trapped in jobs that do not provide them with a sense of purpose or fulfillment. They work long hours, often at the expense of their personal lives, and yet they feel unfulfilled. For some, this sense of futility is compounded by the constant pressure to achieve more, to climb the corporate ladder, and to accumulate wealth and status. However, Camus would argue that instead of succumbing to the absurdity of the workplace, individuals can choose to find meaning in their work by embracing the freedom to act authentically. Rather than viewing work as merely a means to an end, people can approach it as an opportunity to engage with life, to take pride in their contributions, and to find satisfaction in the process itself, not just the outcome. Another way to apply Camus' philosophy in the modern world is through creative rebellion. In today's culture, art and self-expression can be powerful forms of resistance against the absurd. In a society that often prioritizes efficiency, productivity, and consumerism, engaging in creative activities, whether it be writing, painting, music, or any other form of artistic expression, becomes an act of rebellion. Through creativity, individuals assert their freedom and create meaning in a world that offers none. The act of creation itself becomes a form of revolt against the meaninglessness of existence. Just as Camus encouraged individuals to embrace the act of rebellion as a way of affirming their existence, people today can use art and creativity as a means of asserting their individuality and rejecting the absurdity of a world that seems to offer no purpose. Furthermore, the search for personal fulfillment can also be seen as a form of absurd rebellion. In modern society, there's often an expectation that we should be constantly striving for success, happiness, and fulfillment, but these goals are often elusive. In a world where the pursuit of happiness can feel endless and unattainable, Camus would suggest that we stop searching for external sources of meaning and instead create our own meaning through engagement with life. By rejecting the idea that happiness is something to be found and instead embracing the absurdity of our existence, we can begin to live more authentically. This might mean taking risks, following passions, and focusing on experiences that bring personal satisfaction rather than trying to meet societal expectations. For example, someone might leave a high-paying corporate job to pursue a passion for teaching, social work, or environmental activism. On the surface, such a decision may seem irrational or impractical, especially in a world that often values financial success above all else. But from Camus' perspective, this is an act of rebellion, a way of rejecting the external pressures of society and embracing the freedom to choose a life that feels meaningful on a personal level. In doing so, the individual affirms their existence and creates their own meaning, not through the pursuit of wealth or status, but through the act of living authentically and in accordance with their own values. Another key aspect of Camus' absurd rebellion is the idea of living fully in the present moment. In a world that often focuses on the future, whether it's the pursuit of career goals, the hope for a better life, or the promise of an afterlife, Camus encourages us to focus on the here and now. The future may be uncertain, and the past may be filled with regret, but it is in the present that we can truly experience life. By embracing the absurd, we free ourselves from the pressure to constantly seek meaning in the future and instead focus on living with intensity and authenticity in the present. This means appreciating the simple moments, enjoying relationships, engaging with our passions, and finding joy in the act of living itself. In conclusion, Camus' philosophy of absurd rebellion provides a powerful framework for understanding and navigating the challenges of modern life. In a world that often feels chaotic, fragmented, and devoid of meaning, his call to embrace freedom, responsibility, and authenticity offers a way forward. By rejecting the idea that external forces or cosmic purposes can provide ultimate meaning, individuals today can create their own meaning through their choices, actions, and experiences. In doing so, they engage in a form of rebellion, one that asserts their freedom and affirms the value of life itself, even in the face of its inherent absurdity. At the core of Camus' philosophy of absurdism lies the idea of rebellion not merely as a political act or an intellectual stance, but as a personal and creative response to the meaninglessness of existence. In his view, the absurd is an unavoidable part of the human condition, but that does not mean we are condemned to live in despair. On the contrary, Camus suggests that we can create meaning even in a world that does not offer it. This form of rebellion, which he calls creative rebellion, involves actively engaging in life and creating meaning through art, love, and personal projects, despite the ultimate lack of inherent purpose in the universe. Camus' notion of creative rebellion is grounded in the recognition that while the universe itself provides no meaning or higher purpose, human beings are still capable of generating meaning in their lives. The absurdity of existence does not require resignation or passivity. Instead, it invites a different kind of response, one that seeks to create value and significance through human creativity, relationships, and actions. For Camus, creative rebellion is an act of defiance against the absurd. It is a way of affirming life by participating in it fully, even without the promise of a grand, cosmic purpose. One of the primary avenues through which creative rebellion takes place is in art. Art, in all its forms, whether visual art, literature, music, or performance, becomes a means of expressing individual freedom and creating meaning out of the chaos of existence. Artists, for Camus, are quintessential rebels. They do not create in search of some ultimate answer to the mysteries of life. Instead, they create because the act of creation itself is meaningful. By bringing something new into the world, They assert their individuality and their freedom. The artist's rebellion is not just against the absurdity of existence, but also against the idea that life must be structured around a higher purpose or objective. Take, for example, the works of Franz Kafka, whose writing encapsulates the absurdity of the human condition. In The Trial or The Metamorphosis, Kafka explores the alienation and isolation that arise from the absurd. His protagonists are often trapped in bureaucratic systems or existential predicaments, much like Sisyphus pushing his boulder up the hill. Yet Kafka's art does not serve to resolve the absurd. Instead, it embodies it, presenting the struggle as an essential part of life itself. Through the very act of writing, Kafka creates meaning from the absurd, turning his frustration and confusion into a work of art that resonates with readers. Similarly, in visual art, artists like Picasso or Dali created their own worlds through abstract forms and surreal imagery, challenging the conventional understanding of reality and making meaning in a world that provides none. However, creative rebellion is not limited to the realm of high art. It extends to everyday life, where individuals can create meaning through their personal projects, relationships, and pursuits. In a society that often prioritizes success, wealth, and power, Camus encourages us to rebel against these shallow measures of worth and instead find value in the things that truly matter to us. This can be as simple as dedicating oneself to a craft, learning a new skill, or even engaging in acts of kindness that contribute to the well-being of others. What makes these actions significant is that they are chosen freely and authentically, without the need for external validation or cosmic justification. Consider, for instance, someone who takes up a hobby like gardening. In a world where much of our attention is consumed by technology, fast-paced work schedules, and material pursuits, gardening offers a way to engage with the present moment. It might seem like a small or trivial activity, but for the gardener, the act of nurturing a plant, watching it grow, and tending to it with care brings a sense of meaning. The garden itself may not hold any grand significance in the larger scheme of things, but the act of cultivation and connection with nature becomes a form of rebellion against the meaninglessness that surrounds us. It is an acknowledgement that, while the universe does not offer purpose, we are capable of creating purpose in our own lives through our engagement with the world around us. In the realm of relationships, creative rebellion takes the form of love. Camus emphasized the importance of love as a means of creating meaning in life. Love, in all its complexities, offers an avenue for human connection and understanding that transcends the individual's isolation in an indifferent universe. To love is to choose to give oneself to another, to invest time, energy, and emotion in a relationship that offers no guarantees. In a world where nothing is certain, love becomes an act of defiance. It is a choice to give meaning to another person, to affirm their existence and the importance of their presence in our lives. Love, then, is not just an emotional state, but a creative act that brings value to life, even when the world around us offers none. Personal projects, too, are vital expressions of creative rebellion. Whether it's starting a business, writing a novel, learning a new language, or dedicating oneself to a cause, these endeavors are ways to affirm life and create meaning. Each of these projects may not have any lasting significance in the grand scheme of the universe, but they matter to the individual. They become ways to push back against the nihilism that threatens to consume us, allowing us to create a space where we can experience fulfillment and purpose. The act of creating, regardless of the scale, is what gives life its richness and value. In this way, Camus suggests that meaning does not come from external validation or recognition, but from the act of living authentically and creating meaning through our actions. Perhaps the most profound aspect of creative rebellion is that it is not something that can be imposed from the outside. It is a personal and internal choice to live meaningfully in the face of meaninglessness. This choice, however, requires an active engagement with life. It requires that we not withdraw from the world or succumb to despair, but instead confront the absurd with courage and creativity. Camus believed that life could be made meaningful not through the search for answers, but through the engagement with the world as it is. To live authentically, to create, and to love is to find meaning in the very process of living, rather than waiting for external answers or justifications. This active participation in life is essential in a world that often feels increasingly disconnected and alienating. With the rise of technology, the erosion of community, and the increasing pressure to perform and succeed, many people feel more isolated than ever before. In this context, creative rebellion becomes a way to reconnect with what truly matters, to find meaning not in external achievements or material success, but in the internal acts of living fully and authentically. By choosing to create meaning through our actions, we affirm the value of life, even when the world does not provide it. In this way, creative rebellion becomes a form of resistance not against any specific political regime or external authority, but against the absurdity of existence itself. For example, take someone who has spent their life working in a corporate job, climbing the ranks, but has always felt a deep sense of dissatisfaction. They might have spent years in the pursuit of financial success and social status, but they come to realize that none of this brings them the fulfillment they crave. In a moment of clarity, they decide to leave their job and pursue a passion for photography or writing. This decision may seem radical to some, but it is a form of creative rebellion. The individual is choosing to give meaning to their life, not through societal expectations, but through their own desires and passions. By doing so, they embrace their freedom and create their own meaning in the world. Creative rebellion is ultimately about the rejection of passive existence. It is a call to embrace life fully, to create meaning where none is given, and to rebel against the absurdity of a world that offers no ultimate answers. Whether through art, love, personal projects, or even the smallest of actions, we are capable of creating meaning in our lives. This is Camus' challenge to us, to live actively, to choose meaning, and to embrace the freedom that comes from rejecting the search for ultimate purpose in favor of creating our own. In doing so, we not only defy the absurdity of the world, but we also affirm our existence in a way that transcends the meaninglessness that might otherwise define our lives. The myth of Sisyphus, as told in Greek mythology, is one of the most enduring stories that captures the essence of struggle, futility, and the human condition. Sisyphus, the king of Corinth, was condemned by the gods to an eternal, meaningless task: to roll a massive boulder up a hill, only for it to roll back down once he neared the top. He would then have to start the task again, and this endless cycle would continue for all eternity. The myth serves as a powerful metaphor for the absurd nature of life itself: endless effort with no ultimate reward, a ceaseless quest for meaning that leads nowhere. Albert Camus, in his famous essay The Myth of Sisyphus, uses this myth as the central metaphor for his philosophy of absurdism. He takes Sisyphus not as a tragic figure, but as a symbol of human existence. In the context of absurdism, the human condition is characterized by an inherent tension between our search for meaning and the meaninglessness of the universe. Just like Sisyphus, we are condemned to seek purpose, despite the fact that the universe provides no answers. However, for Camus, this does not lead to despair or nihilism. Instead, Sisyphus becomes a symbol of rebellion, of an individual who refuses to accept the futility of life and instead chooses to find meaning in the struggle itself. At first glance, the myth of Sisyphus seems like a story of hopelessness. Sisyphus is condemned to an endless, pointless task, a metaphor for the human struggle to find meaning in a universe that offers none. No matter how hard he works, the boulder always rolls back down. There is no end in sight, no goal to reach, and no final reward. For Camus, this represents the ultimate absurdity. the human desire for meaning clashing with a world that offers no such meaning. Yet, instead of viewing this as a reason for despair, Camus suggests that it is in the acceptance of this absurdity that we can find a kind of liberation. In Camus' philosophy, the key to understanding the myth lies in how we relate to Sisyphus' eternal struggle. The gods condemned Sisyphus not as a punishment for his actions, but as a reflection of the eternal absurdity of existence itself. In the same way, our existence is often marked by a sense of futility, whether it's the pursuit of success, the search for love, or the desire for deeper meaning in life. We may strive tirelessly to achieve something, only to find that once we reach our goal, it does not bring the lasting fulfillment we hoped for. This perpetual cycle of striving and failing to find ultimate meaning mirrors Sisyphus' endless task. Camus argues that it is not the task itself that is important, but how we respond to it. The key to the story of Sisyphus, and to our own experience of the absurd, lies in the way we choose to engage with the struggle. While the boulder will always roll back down, Sisyphus' choice to continue pushing it up the hill, despite the futility of the task, is what makes him a symbol of rebellion. In Camus' view, Sisyphus is not defeated by his endless labor. Instead, he finds meaning in the act of rebellion itself. He chooses to continue, not because he believes the task will ultimately have a purpose, but because he refuses to surrender to the meaninglessness of it. This is the essence of Camus' concept of absurd revolt, an active, defiant response to the absurdity of existence. What makes Sisyphus a symbol of hope, in Camus' eyes, is his ability to find a kind of absurd happiness in the struggle itself. Rather than seeking meaning in the end goal, Sisyphus embraces the struggle as its own form of meaning. For Camus, the search for ultimate meaning in life is futile because the universe offers no answers. But this does not mean that life is without value. The key is to find meaning not in the end, but in the process of living, in the act of rebellion against the absurd. This idea challenges the conventional understanding of happiness and fulfillment. Instead of seeing happiness as something that comes from achieving a specific goal or reaching a final destination, Camus proposes that true happiness can be found in accepting the absurdity of life and continuing to live fully in spite of it. This absurd happiness is not a form of naive optimism or blind escapism. It is a recognition of life's inherent meaninglessness, coupled with a refusal to be defeated by it. Just like Sisyphus, we may not achieve the goals we set for ourselves, and the universe may not provide us with any ultimate answers. But in accepting this, we are free to live authentically, to engage with the world on our own terms, and to find joy in the struggle itself. In this way, the absurd becomes not a source of despair, but a source of freedom. In the context of modern life, the myth of Sisyphus still holds great relevance. We live in a world that constantly promises fulfillment through material success, personal achievements, or societal recognition. Yet, despite these promises, many people find themselves feeling empty, as if they're constantly striving for something that always remains just out of reach. The cycle of pursuing success, only to find that it does not bring lasting satisfaction, mirrors the endless labor of Sisyphus. In this way, the myth highlights the absurdity of the human condition in a consumer-driven society where external accomplishments are often seen as the ultimate source of meaning. Take, for example, the modern obsession with career success. Many people invest years of their lives climbing the corporate ladder, only to realize that once they reach the top, they're still left with a sense of emptiness. The success they sought does not provide the fulfillment they had imagined. In this sense, they're like Sisyphus, tirelessly pushing the boulder up the hill only to see it roll back down. The struggle is endless, and the goal seems perpetually out of reach. Yet, just as Sisyphus finds a form of meaning in his struggle, so too can individuals find fulfillment not in the pursuit of success itself, but in the process of striving. In the choices they make along the way, and in the relationships and experiences that shape their lives. For instance, an individual might spend their life working long hours to achieve a specific career goal. Along the way, they might neglect their health, relationships, and personal passions, believing that success in their career will bring them ultimate happiness. But when they finally achieve that success, they realize that it does not bring the fulfillment they expected. Instead of retreating into despair, however, they can embrace the struggle itself, acknowledging that the journey is just as valuable as the destination. By focusing on the process, on the moments of growth and learning, they can find meaning in the very act of striving, rather than in the external markers of success. The same can be said for relationships. People often enter relationships with the expectation that they will bring ultimate happiness, only to find that no relationship is perfect, and no person can provide all the answers to life's questions. This can lead to disappointment and disillusionment, much like the frustration Sisyphus must feel as he watches his boulder roll back down the hill. Yet, in accepting the inherent flaws and challenges of relationships, individuals can find meaning not in an idealized version of love, but in the genuine connections they form, the growth they experience together, and the moments of joy and intimacy they share. Just as Sisyphus finds his meaning in his rebellion against the gods, people can find meaning in the act of loving, even when it does not conform to their idealized expectations. Camus' philosophy encourages us to embrace the struggle itself as a source of meaning and joy. The key to understanding absurd happiness is not to focus on achieving an ideal goal or reaching a final destination, but rather to appreciate the process of living. Happiness, in this sense, becomes an ongoing act of rebellion against the absurdity of life, a refusal to surrender to the meaninglessness of existence, and a decision to live authentically and fully in the face of it. By doing so, we, like Sisyphus, can find joy not in the end, but in the very act of living itself. Through this acceptance of the absurd, we free ourselves from the need for ultimate answers and can begin to live with a deeper sense of freedom and fulfillment, finding joy in the struggle and in the moments that make up our lives. Albert Camus, though primarily active during the 20th century, has left a profound and enduring legacy on philosophy, literature, and culture that continues to resonate in the modern world. His exploration of the absurd condition of humanity, encapsulated in his concept of absurdism, touches on some of the most fundamental questions of existence, meaning, and the human experience. Even today, as society grapples with the challenges of modernity, Camus' ideas remain relevant, offering insights into how we cope with a world that often seems indifferent or meaningless. Camus' influence on philosophy and modern thought cannot be overstated. His work was revolutionary in that it provided an alternative to both the despair of nihilism and the escapism of religious or metaphysical solutions. While many thinkers, particularly in the existentialist tradition, explore the idea of finding meaning in an otherwise meaningless world, Camus took a different approach. Instead of seeking solace in an ultimate truth or higher meaning, he emphasized the importance of embracing the absurd, that is, the confrontation between our desire for meaning and the universe's refusal to provide it. This acceptance of the absurd, far from leading to despair, became a call to live more authentically, to rebel against the futility of existence, and to create meaning in our own lives through action and engagement with the world. Camus' impact extends beyond philosophy into literature, where his works, such as The Stranger and The Myth of Sisyphus, have inspired generations of writers, thinkers, and artists. These works, which portray characters struggling with existential questions, reveal the complexity and depth of human existence in a universe that offers no easy answers. The protagonist of The Stranger, Meursault, for example, exemplifies the absurd hero who, despite his awareness of life's inherent meaninglessness, chooses to live authentically, refusing to conform to societal expectations. Camus literature invites readers to reflect on their own experiences and challenges them to confront the absurd in their own lives. Through his novels, essays, and plays, Camus brought the ideas of absurdism to the forefront of intellectual discourse, influencing writers, philosophers, and artists around the world. One of the reasons Camus philosophy remains so relevant today is because it addresses the profound sense of alienation and disillusionment that many people experience in modern society. In the 21st century, the challenges that Camus explored: the search for meaning, the confrontation with suffering, the disconnection between individuals and society are more pressing than ever. As modern life becomes increasingly fast-paced, fragmented, and driven by technology, many people find themselves searching for something deeper, something that provides a sense of purpose in a world that often feels shallow or devoid of meaning. In today's world, where information overload and constant connectivity are the norm, it's easy to become overwhelmed by the relentless pace of life. The pressures of work, family, and social expectations can create a sense of alienation, as individuals struggle to reconcile their personal desires with the demands of society. Much like Camus' characters, many people today feel disconnected from the world around them, caught in a cycle of striving for goals that seem to offer no lasting fulfillment. The modern obsession with material success and social validation, fueled in part by social media, can leave people feeling empty and unsatisfied, much like Sisyphus pushing his boulder uphill only for it to roll back down again. In this context, Camus philosophy provides a framework for understanding and confronting the absurdity of modern existence. It challenges us not to seek meaning from external sources, whether from success, wealth, or social recognition, but to create meaning from within, to live authentically and passionately, even in the face of life's inherent futility. Furthermore, the rapid pace of technological advancement has brought with it a new set of existential questions that resonate with Camus' ideas. As artificial intelligence, automation, and globalization continue to reshape our world, many people are left questioning their role in an increasingly mechanized society. The rise of automation, for example, has led to fears of job displacement and the erosion of traditional work structures, raising questions about human purpose in a world where machines seem to be taking over many tasks. In such a world, Camus' idea of embracing the absurd and taking responsibility for one's own meaning becomes even more crucial. Rather than relying on external sources of validation or the promise of progress to provide fulfillment, individuals are called to find their own purpose through creative rebellion and engagement with life on their own terms. Camus offers an alternative to the nihilism that might arise in the face of technological upheaval. He encourages us to embrace our freedom and to create meaning through our actions and choices, even if we cannot escape the inherent absurdity of the world. Camus' relevance also extends to contemporary debates about existentialism, identity, and authenticity. In a world where individuals are increasingly encouraged to define themselves in relation to external factors, such as their social media profiles, their jobs, or their material possessions, the idea of living authentically, as Camus suggests, is both revolutionary and necessary. The constant pursuit of external validation can lead to a sense of emptiness, as individuals become disconnected from their true selves. Camus' call to live authentically, to create meaning through personal engagement and individual freedom, offers a way to resist the pressures of conformity and to find fulfillment in the present moment, not in some distant or idealized future. In the face of global crises such as climate change, political instability, and widespread inequality, Camus' philosophy also speaks to the importance of action in the face of an unjust world. His ideas on rebellion and revolt are particularly pertinent in a time when many feel powerless to address the challenges of the modern world. Just as Sisyphus refuses to surrender to the gods, individuals today are called to resist passivity and to take action, even when faced with insurmountable odds. Whether it's advocating for environmental sustainability, fighting for social justice, or working to build more equitable communities, Camus' ideas encourage us to act in ways that affirm our humanity, to create meaning through our efforts, and to reject resignation or despair in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. Despite the apparent hopelessness of the human condition that Camus often explored, his legacy is ultimately one of hope and empowerment. By emphasizing the importance of personal responsibility, individual freedom, and creative rebellion, Camus offers a way to find meaning and fulfillment in a world that often seems devoid of purpose. His philosophy is not one of passive acceptance, but of active engagement with the world, of choosing to live authentically, of embracing the struggle, and of creating meaning through action, art, love, and personal projects. In this sense, Camus is not just a philosopher of the past, but a thinker whose ideas continue to inspire and challenge us today. One of the most significant aspects of Camus' enduring legacy is his ability to bridge the gap between philosophy and everyday life. While his ideas about the absurd may seem abstract, they have practical implications for how we navigate our relationships, our work, and our personal struggles. Camus' philosophy encourages us to embrace life in all its complexity, to find meaning in the moments we have, and to live fully despite the knowledge that life is ultimately finite and without inherent purpose. In a world that can often feel overwhelming and uncertain, Camus' call to live with courage, authenticity, and creativity offers a powerful antidote to the despair that might otherwise consume us. As we move further into the 21st century, the relevance of Camus' philosophy is only likely to grow. His ideas provide a framework for understanding and responding to the challenges of modern life. From a search for personal fulfillment to the larger existential questions posed by technological, social, and political changes, Camus' legacy is not one of passive resignation to the absurd, but of active rebellion against it, a rebellion that affirms life, embraces freedom, and creates meaning in a world that offers none. His work continues to inspire new generations of thinkers, writers, and activists who seek to find their own answers to the existential questions of our time, making Camus not just a philosopher of the past, but a philosopher for the future. Camus' philosophy of absurdism, at its core, challenges us to confront the inherent meaninglessness of existence while rejecting despair. His ideas invite us not to look for ultimate answers in some distant or external source, but to create meaning in the here and now by embracing our freedom, living authentically, and engaging with the world as it is. His work offers a profound exploration of human existence, one that does not shy away from the darkness of absurdity, but invites us to find light within it. Central to Camus' absurdism is the recognition that life, in itself, holds no inherent purpose. The universe does not offer us any clear answers, nor does it provide us with a grand design to follow. This confrontation between the human need for meaning and the universe's indifference is the absurd. However, instead of succumbing to despair or nihilism, Camus argues that the very awareness of this absurdity offers us a powerful freedom. The absurdity of life does not mean that we are doomed to a life of pointless suffering. Rather, it frees us to live authentically, to make our own choices, and to create meaning within our own existence. For Camus, the key to living authentically in an absurd world is embracing the struggle itself. In his view, the search for meaning may be inherently futile, but it is in that search, often fraught with frustration, hardship, and uncertainty, that we find our humanity. His exploration of the myth of Sisyphus offers a poignant metaphor for this. Sisyphus, condemned by the gods to push a boulder up a hill only for it to roll back down every time, represents the human condition, a never-ending struggle for meaning in a world that provides none. Yet, for Camus, Sisyphus is a hero because he chooses to continue despite the futility of the task. He does not surrender to the absurd. Instead, he finds meaning in the struggle itself. Camus' idea of absurd happiness is derived from this rebellion against the absurd, the realization that even in the face of life's futility, we can still find joy in the act of living, in the process of striving, and in the rebellion itself. This rebellious spirit is what makes Camus' philosophy both a call to action and a source of empowerment. In a world that often feels overwhelming, uncertain, or disorienting, the idea that we can create our own meaning offers a sense of agency. It is a refusal to wait for answers from outside, and a recognition that we have the capacity to shape our lives, to find fulfillment in the present moment, and to live authentically in accordance with our own values. Instead of resigning ourselves to a life of passivity or despair, we are encouraged to live fully, to engage with life directly, and to embrace the absurd not as a reason to give up, but as an invitation to create. The power of Camus' philosophy lies in its recognition that, even though the universe may be indifferent to our existence, we are not powerless. Rather than seeking comfort in traditional systems of meaning, whether through religion, ideology, or societal norms, Camus encourages us to rebel against these external frameworks and to find our own meaning through personal engagement. This can take the form of creative rebellion, such as making art or pursuing a passion, or through personal projects that reflect our authentic selves. By living in this way, we assert our freedom and autonomy in a world that offers no predetermined path. In the modern world, where individuals are often confronted with an overwhelming sense of alienation and disillusionment, Camus' ideas remain especially relevant. The rise of social media, consumerism, and technology often presents an image of success and happiness that is far removed from the realities of human existence. People are encouraged to strive for an idealized version of life that rarely aligns with their true selves. In this context, the search for meaning can seem more elusive than ever. Camus, however, offers a different perspective. He reminds us that meaning is not something that is given to us from the outside, but something that we create for ourselves. By acknowledging the absurd and continuing to live fully and authentically, we can resist the forces of alienation and find joy in the act of living itself. At the heart of Camus' philosophy is the idea of embracing life in all its complexity and uncertainty. He does not promise us a world free from suffering, conflict, or existential crisis. Instead, he calls us to face these realities head-on and to live with a sense of purpose that comes not from external validation, but from our own engagement with the world. To embrace the absurd, according to Camus, is to accept that life is neither fair nor meaningful in the traditional sense, but that it is worth living nonetheless. This act of rebellion, of living authentically in a meaningless world, is what gives life its value. Camus challenges us to embrace freedom, the freedom to choose, to act, and to live authentically, even in the face of uncertainty and chaos. This freedom is not just about rejecting external constraints, but about taking responsibility for our own lives and the meaning we assign to them. It requires us to confront the fact that, ultimately, we are the ones who create meaning through our choices and actions. This sense of agency, of taking control of our own existence, is what enables us to live with dignity, purpose, and authenticity. One of the most powerful aspects of Camus' philosophy is that it does not offer an easy escape from life's difficulties. Rather than promising some ultimate resolution to the human condition, Camus invites us to find meaning in the struggle itself. This is where Camus' absurd hero comes into play, not someone who passively accepts life's meaninglessness, but someone who actively chooses to live with it, to rebel against it, and to find joy and purpose in the process of living. It is a form of empowerment that arises not from denying the absurdity of life, but from embracing it and choosing to create meaning within it. The challenge, then, is to live authentically in a world that offers no guarantees. It means rejecting the comforting illusions of a grand purpose or a higher meaning, and instead focusing on the small, personal moments that make life worth living. It is in these moments, whether in a moment of artistic creation, in the act of love, or in the pursuit of personal passions, that we find true meaning. Camus calls this creative rebellion, the act of actively engaging with life and creating meaning where none exists. By doing so, we can find fulfillment and joy, not in the pursuit of some ultimate goal, but in the process itself. In conclusion, Camus' philosophy of absurdism is not one of despair, but one of liberation. It encourages us to confront the meaninglessness of existence and to find joy and purpose in the act of living authentically. The absurd does not defeat us, but rather frees us to create our own meaning, to rebel against the forces of conformity and alienation, and to live fully in the face of uncertainty. Camus calls on each of us to embrace the absurd and, in doing so, to create a life that is uniquely our own. This is the true essence of absurdism, living with freedom, integrity, and authenticity, even in a world that offers no ultimate answers. By doing so, we not only defy the absurd, but also affirm the very act of living itself. So what does it all mean? After everything we've explored, the lesson is clear. Life may not offer us inherent meaning, but that doesn't mean we can't create our own. Camus teaches us that the absurd is not something to despair over. Instead, it's an invitation to live with freedom, authenticity, and defiance. The struggle for meaning, much like Sisyphus pushing his boulder up the hill, is part of what makes us human. And in embracing that struggle, we find our joy. Camus' absurdism isn't about resignation, it's about rebellion. It's about choosing to live fully and passionately, even when the universe offers no guarantees. And the best part? That power is yours. You have the ability to choose how you engage with life, how you create meaning, and how you embrace the absurdity that defines human existence. So, go ahead and live authentically. Choose joy in the struggle. Create your own meaning in a world that offers none. If this video made you think, if it sparked something deep inside you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you agree with Camus? How do you deal with the absurdity of life in your own journey? Let's keep this conversation going. And of course, don't forget to like if you enjoyed this video and share it with anyone who might need to hear these ideas. If you haven't already, hit subscribe for more mind-expanding content. And make sure you click the notification bell so you're the first to know when new videos are released. If you want to show your support, super thank is always appreciated. It helps keep the content coming and gives me the energy to dive into even more thought-provoking ideas. Remember, the absurd doesn't define us. It's how we live in the face of it that gives us meaning. Let's continue embracing the absurd and living authentically together. Until next time, keep questioning, keep rebelling, and above all, keep living.